Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Faces of Growth podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Rose, and today we are just going to have a chat about some things that came up for me this week, and I'm going to talk about them in the context of what I talked about last week in terms of parts and doing parts work and kind of digging in deeper into my subconscious mind. I really want to be a person who is a planner. I love my planners. I love having like goals for each quarter and goals for the whole year. I follow Sarah Cannon's HB90 method. And what I find happens to me every single quarter is I come up with this plan that at the beginning of the quarter feels right and like, okay, here's my vision. This is what I'm working towards. And then things happen and energy shifts. And I'm like, nope, here's the path. And that's how I feel like with this podcast. So, last week's episode, I said next week I'm going to be talking about your authentic self. And we may talk about your authentic self today. But something happened to me yesterday that I was like, nope, this is what I need to talk about for this week's podcast episode. And hopefully, if you are listening, are, you know, my heart, you know that I'm a good person and I'm not going to get canceled for the things I'm going to say. But then again, at this point, and when I'm putting out this podcast, I have like 5 listeners. So if you are here with me, thank you. And know that this comes from a place of love. So, anyways, this is what happened this week for me. I am a social worker and I'm an empath. And that means I feel very deeply about things, especially social justice issues. And it's really hard for me to sit by and tolerate and accept and not speak out against things that are people's rights being taken away, people being discriminated against. And so since January 20th, there's been a lot of that happening. And yesterday, when I was reading an article about how the Pentagon is canceling all like celebrations around Black History Month, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Juneteenth, all of those things, Women's History Month, it got to me very deeply. And I was just at first, very angry and very upset and very frustrated. And I felt like I needed to say something. And so I wrote a post and kind of came up with my own plan of how am I going to honor those months and those celebrations in a way that feels right for me. I thought that after kind of speaking out against it, coming up with my own plan, that would relieve some of the pressure. And it did in a way. And then I was listening to Onyx Storm, the third book in the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros. And in that book, I'm not going to give spoilers away for anybody who hasn't read it yet, but there's just the scene that I was at yesterday was my favorite character being rejected in this big way. And it just made me so sad, so sad. And so it was like inside of me, there were all these big feelings about rejection and people trying to erase other people and their culture and their history. And it just felt so heavy. So I sat with it for a little while. And that's where I started doing the parts work because, yes, my moral outrage about Black History Month being canceled by the federal government, that is justified. And I should feel morally outraged. But the level of sadness that I was feeling on top of that just felt like, okay, there's something else going on here. And this is where I'm saying, please don't cancel me because, like, I am not equating my experiences with the experience of Black, Indigenous persons of color. I know that I am a white woman and I have a lot of privilege in my life. So, what I'm about to say next is not, again, trying to erase anybody else's experience. It was just me diving in deep of like, why am I being triggered? Because I know that like when strong emotions come up, that is your system telling you something's not right here. And so I asked my system, what is going on beyond normal moral outrage about this? And the thing I heard from one of my parts was, we've been erased too. And so I did some digging into that. What do you mean we've been erased too? And all of these instances in my life flashed through my mind. So I know I'm clearing something because like my throat chakra is like coming unclogged. And so if you hear me like clearing my throat, I'm going to try to edit that out as much as possible. But it's like, oh, this stuff wants to come out and wants to be spoken to clear it. So my mind flashed through all of these experiences in my life with friends, with family members, with my ex's family, where I have been rejected, forgotten, erased. You know, I've been blocked by people. I've been just told by people like, I don't have time for you because I have new friends. And all of those experiences have hurt, definitely. And I've come to a place on a intellectual and spiritual level, I would say, where my older parts can see that for what it is. Those people resonated with me at one point in time. And then as we grow and we shift and our energy changes, they no longer resonated with me. And so, or I didn't resonate with them. And so that's when separation happens in relationships, is when we no longer are on the same wavelength. So I can intellectualize that. I can understand that from a higher perspective. But inside of me is still that little girl who just feels rejected by people, who just feels like she's living in her sister's shadow, who just feels like she's not as cool as other people, that people just don't like her, or she's invisible because she's quiet and sensitive. So that little girl is the one who is really hurting today or yesterday about, you know, erasure, rejection, those types of things. So I sat with that little girl. I let her express her story. And then I called in my authentic self to help her heal. So I guess this is the part where I will tell you about your authentic self, my authentic self. So to me, my authentic self is the part of me that is the most spiritually connected. It is the highest level of my consciousness that is connected to the divine source. So this is a part that every single person has. This is the part of you that is aligned with love, with wisdom, and with truth. So your higher self or your authentic self is the part of you that can see your life from a much broader perspective, right? Like they're up above and they can see the whole landscape, whereas you're on the road or on the field and you can just see what's in front of you. And to me, my authentic self is very helpful in guiding me and helping to kind of show me what my most aligned path would be, because they can see from that broader perspective, right? They can see, if you go here, this is what's going to happen. But if you go here, then this could happen, right? Or if you align with this thing, then you will have a better outcome. So whenever I get in tune with my authentic self, I know I'm being led and guided with love and that there's a purpose behind it. In addition, my authentic self helps me heal, helps my parts heal. So whenever I'm working with a part, I hear their story, I let them help me understand what's really happening, and then I call on my authentic self. And my authentic self comes in with support, with love, with wisdom, and with guidance and healing energy. And so if I have a part that's really stuck in a story that's not really true or a behavior that is harmful, my authentic self can talk with that part, reason with it, and to show it there's another way, and that this part does not have to hold on to this burden anymore. And so a lot of times it looks like my authentic self is like hugging and embracing a part. It's allowing that part to release its energy, its burden, its fears to my authentic self. And then my authentic self transmutes it back into pure love and light and releases it from my system. So, my authentic self is very, very important in my healing. And it has been an ongoing developing relationship, I would say, for the past 10 years. I first started learning about what I say authentic self because that feels right for me. But a lot of people call this part of you your higher self or your spirit. And so, um, probably about 10 years ago, I was at a holistic fair and they had like a free book table. And I walked over to it and immediately was drawn to this book by a woman named Sanaya Roman. And I believe it's called Spiritual Growth Being Your Higher Self. And it's a channeled book, and it's all about what your higher self is and how to get in connection with it. That book changed my life for the better in so many ways. I tell people it's like my version of a Bible, which again, don't cancel me for saying that, but it's just such a spiritual text that expanded me in such beautiful ways. I actually just came across it yesterday when I was unpacking, and I'm like, I'm due for a reread to go through the exercises again, to just like be in that vibration of continuing to grow and develop this relationship with my higher self. But anyway, so that's where like my journey began of exploring this relationship with a spiritual being that we all have. And daily, every single day, I am getting in connection with my authentic self and asking for healing, asking for guidance, asking for to be, I do it like I connect with her before therapy sessions, right? Guide my words, allow my words to be loving and healing so that I'm not coming from a place of my ego trying to help somebody heal. I'm coming from a place of higher consciousness. My If you haven't read my book Align and Bloom, I share a lot about my authentic self in that book. But her name is Christy Bella, and she is delightful. And when I visualize her, I see this very like ethereal being. She's wearing like an icy blue dress and she has black curly hair and just very like fair skin. And she's just this beautiful being of love and light. And so that connection to me is super important and very, very healing. And it's something I love to share with other people in therapeutic work that I do with them, of like how to develop and connect with their authentic self. Because to me, it's like a very important step in your spiritual evolution. So, anyways, yesterday I heard the part, heard its story, understood where like the intense sadness was coming from. Like I said, there was like a difference. I knew the moral outrage was just coming from like, this is wrong and not okay, and I'm not going to stand for it. And then there was like this deep wound of sadness that was just wouldn't go away. And so my parts shared that with me, and then my higher self helped that part, unburden, release the pain from these past relationships. And that process, I mean, I think that process is something that most people can do on their own, but there's certain things, certain traumas and situations in your life that I would encourage you to go through this type of work with a trained therapist, somebody who's trained in internal family systems or shadow work. And but the process is very much just like, if that part of you agrees it's ready to let all of that stuff go, they can release it into an element. Or a lot of times, like I said, my parts want to release to my authentic self. So my authentic self takes the energy from this part and then transmutes it and releases it back to the collective, to divine oneness. That was kind of like the first level of this experience for me, was what's happened during this lifetime. And then it went deeper. So I'm a person who is an Akashic Records practitioner. And I wasn't really planning on talking about your authentic self and the Akashic Records all in one podcast. Um, but this won't be the only time I talk about these things, because they're integral to the work that I do. So I'm going to give you just a very quick, like, explanation of what the Akashic Records are. The Akashic Records are the energetic records of all that is in the entire universe and all the universes. Okay. No small thing. We each have our own Akashic Records that is basically like the energetic container and information of what our soul has experienced in this lifetime and in other lifetimes and dimensions. Okay. So we can access the records by expanding our consciousness, much like connecting with our authentic self. It's expanding our consciousness into this higher dimension to receive wisdom, love, healing, and guidance. And right now I'm reading a book. I think it's called A Radical Approach to Using the Akashic Records, or Working in the Akashic Records. I will link that below. But this book is focused on healing karma, and that is like the most important thing that you can do in your spiritual journey, is to heal karma. So after I worked with the part, I just opened myself up to the Akashic Records and said, okay, are there themes in other lifetimes that are attached to this sense of rejection or erasure that are impacting me in this lifetime? And it was an immediate yes. And I'm very connected to the lifetimes that I've had in the earth realm. I think there's probably some more that aren't necessarily from this realm, but right now I'm aware of the lives I've had. And it's very interesting because most people are like, oh, I was in ancient Egypt. And I'm like, no, my soul came to earth like in the 1700s, and I've only been in America, which I'm like, I don't get that. But here we are. Maybe next time I will live in a different country. But, anyways, so it was like very clear to me, like, again, it was just kind of flashes in my mind, and like an intuitive knowing of how I've experienced rejection and people erasing me or erasing my personhood in all these different lifetimes. And so I could use the energy of the Akashic realm and the support of my authentic self to send healing to all of those lifetimes, which will help me during this lifetime as well. So, all of this to say, our triggers are important because they're information about where we need healing. And a lot of that healing cannot be done, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, by just talking about it. I think there is a benefit of speaking our truth, right? Like, why am I doing this podcast? I'm expressing and I am speaking my truth and I'm sharing that with others. We all want to be witnessed. We all want to be heard. We all want to be validated in some ways. So I'm not dismissing the benefits of talk therapy. If I just talked about this experience, I wouldn't get to the energetic roots of that trigger. So that trigger would still exist within me. I might just have a little bit better of an understanding of its presence and why it's there. And then if it comes up again, I could kind of remind myself or try to shift and stuff like that. But by doing the work that I did, by connecting with my parts, connecting with my authentic self, going deeper into the Akashic Records, I was able to unhook the energetic roots and release that burden, or burdens, I should say, because it's spanned across many different lifetimes. And now, when situations like this arise, again, the moral outrage that I have about people being mistreated is still going to be there. But I'm not going to have the deep level of sadness that's connected to my own experiences, if that makes sense. I've healed that trigger by doing deeper energetic and spiritual work around it. So to me, it's very important to go to those deeper layers and to connect with your system, connect with your authentic self, and expand consciousness, because it's like that's where true, again, my opinion, I could be wrong, but this is what has worked for me and worked with people that I work with. When we expand our consciousness, we can just see things from a broader perspective, understand things from a broader perspective, and heal at a deeper level. So you might be sitting here being like, that's great, Brittany. How do you do all this? So what I'm going to say to you is that if this is all new to you, you do not have a relationship with your authentic self, this is the first time you've ever heard of the Akashic Records, the first step is getting comfortable being inside of yourself and sitting in quiet and sitting in stillness. So that saying that people say of like, quiet the mind so the soul can speak is so true and important. So the best thing you can do to start going deeper within yourself is learning how to be within yourself by meditating. You can start with guided meditations, but once you get comfortable, I would really encourage you to spend some time like literally just sitting and focusing on your breath, just learning to be quiet. And you might start with just 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, you're probably going to wander in 20 different directions. But the practice with meditation is, can I bring myself back? Can I notice that my mind wandered? And then I bring myself back to the task of just being with my breath, or just being with my body, or just being with a candle flame. Some people, it's not comfortable to focus on your breath. So in that instance, I would say give yourself a visual thing that you're just focusing on, but you're letting your mind just be quiet and present with whatever that thing is in the moment. And it seems like some people might feel like that's not a great starting place, but to me, it is the most important starting place, right? Like, I have to be able to tune out all the other noise, all my other parts, in order to hear and receive my authentic self's guidance, or the Akashic Records guidance. And the way that I was able to learn how to do that was sitting in stillness and just allowing myself to be open and not as controlled by my different parts of self. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. And I do want to let you know that until February 16th, 2025, I am running a sale on my website for all my services, $20 off any service. You just have to use the code LOVESALE, all caps, at checkout. So if this spoke to you and you're interested in learning more of like how to connect with your parts, how to connect with your authentic self, want to experience going into the Akashic Records with me, now is your time to sign up for a session for a discounted rate. And like I said before, my goal is to put all of this into a course. But it's just figuring out when the time is right and the energy is right for that. There's something that's holding me back. And I guess that's like a part that I need to work on within myself of like, what is holding me back from doing this? Because it's a course I've thought about for like well over a year. Um, so I'm going to work on that. That is going to be my goal for this week is like, what is holding me back? Is it like truly an energetic thing of like, it just doesn't feel like the time is right? Or is it a part of me? I'm going to guess it's a part of me, but I'll report back. And hopefully at some point this year, I will be offering that course. But, anyways, if you want to work with me one on one, now is the time to book yourself a session. So, all of that will be linked in the show notes. And I will talk to you guys again soon. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.